play nice with the mics.
But why don't we start with some intros then? Maybe that'll kick off some conversation. I'm happy to go first. I'm David Goldberg. My day job is that of a Web 2 investor. I'm a general partner at a firm called Alpaca VC. I'm also a co-founder of a Web 3 fantasy basketball company called Swoops. And then today here, I'm representative of a founding member of a couple of DAOs, one called VC3, one called Miami Tech Runs, and the other is called Warwick DAO. Two of the three are investing DAOs. We'll probably talk a little bit about that later.
All right. Hey guys, it's David here. So I'm the founder and GP of OP Crypto, which is an early stage venture fund based out of New York. You know, our thesis is really investing in a lot of the application layer infrastructure, crossing the path between the Eastern and Western markets, giving access to both. I'm here representing, my own DAO that we created called Alpha DAO, that we kind of come together as builders and VCs to really syndicate some of the best early stage deal flow to some of the wider communities in crypto.
Hey guys, my name is Jeffrey Joe. On my end, launching a ZK-focused incubator early stage, so received some grants from some of the protocols to do that, and contributing to DAOs independently, decentralized wireless, and more regional DAOs as well. Formerly investing out of Tokentis for an early stage Web3 focused fund out of Frankfurt, Germany. Primarily CeFi, DeFi infrastructure area.
I am way out of my league with the finance stuff. So my name is Elijah. Go by Flow Science and Web3. I was up here earlier for the DCI panel as well. I'm a core team member at DAO Planet, so some of you may know me already. My background is as a molecular biologist, genetics, genomics work. I started a biotech lab in my garage, did that for about 6 years until we moved into a commercial space, had staff about 25 people. We're basically the Ancestry.com for cannabis and for the plant itself, which led me to forming a data DAO. DAO governed data marketplace essentially led me to DAO Planet, learning about more DAOs. I really call Bankless DAO my home. So I do know a little bit about DeFi, if you know anything about Bankless. But yeah, that's sort of my thing. I've gone full-time Web3, just full-time DAO. I'm community and operations manager for MedDAO. So yeah, DAOs, all DAOs.
So since we are unmoderated, one, I'm happy to throw out the first question and see who wants to answer it. But two, as much as we'll try and fill the time, maybe let's try to make this as interactive as possible. If you have a question, either raise your hand or maybe just walk up over here and we'll throw you in, and feel free to contribute. You have something?
We're decentralizing.
I was going to say, I'll run the mic. So if you see a hand up, just point at somebody and they'll get a mic.
But I'm happy to throw out the first topic and kind of wing in this as we go. But I noticed that, I guess, 3 of the 4 of us here are sort of more traditional fund investors. And so I guess I'd ask, why DAOs, right? What advantages do DAOs have in the investing world versus traditional, GP, LP structures?
Yeah, I think for us, as fund managers, no one has really figured out a way to really scale venture, right? In a way where it's there's only one of me, there's only so many deals I can physically look at, there's only so many founders I can physically meet. So how do we do it in a way where, I'm able to consume a lot of information, but at the same time being able to output and be able to help as many founders as possible. So this is why we created kind of this DAO syndicate platform where it's everyone can sort of take the part of sourcing deals, talking to founders, but at the same time, each and every one of them has sort of their own role in contributing and helping out those founders when possible. And all of it is we're all tied into this network together where we all have incremental upside. And the commitment is not huge enough where it's they need to do that full time, but when they have the spare time, they have the additional incentivizations to allow them to do so. So we do think that eventually venture capital will evolve in a way where it will be a lot more decentralized. People will be able to participate very meaningfully without you having to hire these people on as full-time members of the team. And I think this new model will eventually help the world to fund more projects that actually need to be funded and really pave innovation and onwards and forward.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with you, definitely. I mean, we're VCs investing in the most cutting edge stuff, but we ourselves are in kind of the most old school business, and how the VC world works is so old school in a way, which I think, I guess it makes sense in a way, but DAOs are kind of an evolution of that. I mean, for us out of our fund, we never invested in DAOs. I mean, we're much more of a traditional, in fact, mostly equity type of investments. And DAOs, I've personally participated in to get access to more, access to interesting deal flow, access to interesting areas that you normally wouldn't get access to. And I think what's interesting about DAOs is that you get to kind of participate in areas and find ways to contribute more like ad hoc and individually. Like, you said you're a scientist, right? Or by degree at least. And my undergrad degree was molecular cell biology. But I never did that after college. After that I'm like, okay, let's do fintech and just not go to grad school ever again, right?
Smart decision. Yeah. That's really cool. And I think my perspective on that, I guess, in terms of financially oriented DAOs, I that's probably not the right way to say it, but in terms of DAOs, we're thinking about voting and governance, right? And so with I guess, like an investment syndicate type DAO, right, a co-investment, it's very easy to have a tokenized based voting. And so I think that in the purest sense, there's a lot of concerns about token-based voting. But in this context, I think it makes a lot of sense, right? Because time is money. There's a famous article called "Bitcoin is Time," and I think with DAOs, that's what enables us to do, and it enables us to arbitrage our time and really place it where we find the most value. And hopefully, with these new funding models connecting that, it really essentially comes back to that principle of what optimism they were talking about, is having that equality between the value that is created and the profit, right? That exchange.
So I'll add one point. I think there's been a couple of Web 2 attempts at some of the same things that we're talking about, whether it's scout networks or advisory boards or expert networks, right? Trying to scale and bring in some of those skills and expertise from people outside of the actual core firm. And I think now that I've been a part of some DAOs that have done this on the investing side, what's missing in those models is, one, the automation, and two, it's the micro transaction, right? To be able to spin up a quick advisory board, diligence panel, investment committee to incentivize with some type of token, or in a traditional investment model, like, you can't do that with carried interest. There's a lot of legal paperwork, a lot of tax consequences. You always have someone who either over delivers or under delivers. And so to me, that's probably the biggest opportunity on the investing front.
Should we just free flow or like
free for all? I feel like we should take questions from the audience, right?
Anyone have any questions? If not, I'm going to keep playing moderator and peppering everybody up here.
Yeah.
So I like the concept of, like, tokens allow you to vote and everything, but not all votes are necessarily created equal in terms of, if we're looking for projects to fund, right? Like, you want the best analysts looking at things, right? Versus, because if you just give the people what they want, they'll ask for a faster buggy, right? Or a better whip, for their horse, versus creating a car, right? So, like, how do you address that problem with a DAO, where it's like you should weight certain people's opinions likely heavier than others, but you still want to be, by the people for the people kind of thing?
Yeah. So. Happy to give my take. That's the right question for sure, and there's a reason traditional VC funds have general partners and investment committees and not letting the LPs and investors vote for themselves. There's a reason they give the capital to the other group who, in theory, knows what to do with it. So I can just speak on behalf of one of the DAOs I'm a part of, which is called VC3. It has about 175 members, all traditional venture investors from 28 countries, different sector expertise. We come from firms that manage about $5 billion of AUM. We have multiple layers of diligence, some of which where everyone gets to vote, let's call it like the shareholder vote, and then other times we spin up sector or expert specific committees. Those committees are often formed based on the votes of all the shareholders, and then they make another layer of decisions. And so in some ways it's checks and balances. In other ways it slows some things down, right, which is sort of anti-DAO, but it's sort of the happy medium to get to around the problem, I think, that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think like ultimately for investment vehicles, it's probably not the best bet to like have people vote on the investment decisions themselves. So I think like in that case, a DAO model makes more sense when like other people are contributing, their other skill sets to be able to better help out the portfolios, whether they like ship code or like they build a community or they help you hire talent, etc. Right? Anything that really helps out the portfolio at hand, and or they're the ones sourcing the deal flow, right? Because these are things that very easily can be quantified, and these are things that in the scale, like people are able to be very easily rewarded from the carry interest for a particular deal that they do. But I think with investment decisions, it's just like the more people there is, it's harder to become really a unanimous decision. And ultimately, I think it's just like sector experts should really dictate sort of like how the investment process should be run for whichever sector you're looking at, whether it's gaming or NFTs, social, etc. Like eventually, I think it's like as a fund, you're just unable to just look at everything yourself, so that like in that case, you're able to almost build, like for example, for our fund, like we have an expert network, right? Where it's like we're not able to look at every single function of everything, but ultimately be able to leverage on our expert network to give us advice and to even help us with additional diligence and support for deals that we do.
Actually, kind of going off of that, we wouldn't rely on the average DAO member to make investment decisions, right? So likely it'd be delegated, essentially like a more of a company structure where the experts kind of analyze their own verticals and make those decisions, right? And I remember somebody asked, actually I was talking to Lucas about this the other day, who unfortunately couldn't join us because he got COVID, but he was supposed to have been here with us on this panel here. I was talking about about this the other day. If we had if Celsius was a DAO, right? Would it have turned out the same way? And quite frankly, actually, I don't think turning it into a DAO per se would have really helped the situation. It either would have been like a kind of a direct democracy, a holacracy, maybe like a Switzerland style of voting, where in that case you have really low capital efficiency and not really the best way to manage a fund, so decision making and kind of potentially gameable as well. Or the flip side is it would have been kind of delegated to more kind of folks who are experts, like professional fund managers essentially, but then they could have just as easily well have made, taken leveraged decisions resulting in a very similar outcome, in my opinion.
Right, and the same is true for, in my case, that you don't want experts making decisions about scientific data and things like that, right? Or you do want the experts making that decision, right? Not maybe the general public. You may want them to interpret what the impact is going to be, but not scrutinize the data itself, right? Not make that hard decision. And so, yeah, in terms of what are we, taking a step back, the name of the panel, right? What are we talking about in terms of growth? We've talked a lot about financial growth and things like that, but also just sort of to take a step back, right? What is and even to connect to the previous panel, what is the mission of the DAO? And I think that's really what I want to kind of get into with you guys is where, in terms of the application of decentralization or distributing something to the extreme, does that result in increased efficiency of growth, right? What is that growth? Is it the mission, or it's not just purely capital all the time, right? And it depends on the context, but I don't know what you guys think about that in terms of DAOs and the potential for growth of an organization compared to something like a more traditional organization.
What was the question? Sorry.
How do you think, like, implying, what we've been talking about here, a DAO structure to say like an investment or like a data DAO, kind of even piggybacking off of the previous panel, like how does this concept of decentralization lead to more or less growth, or what are the,
So
what are your opinions?
I'm happy to give my take, and I don't know if this is controversial, but my opinion is that like you need some level of centralization for most of these efforts, and that somewhere between 70 and 80% of the main operation is basically the same as if you were set up as a limited partnership or an LLC, right? So we're talking about investing. I actually think the main investment process is mostly the same, right? You have your core investment professionals, you have your experts who do what they do in terms of their research and the diligence. Where the DAO can really make the difference is all the edges, the tentacles of all the other stuff that it needs to do? How do you find that one scientist, maybe for example, that's obviously not going to be a full-time part of your team, for that 20-minute phone call to verify something? How do you find that one recruiter who can help place talent post-investment? With the DAO vehicle, you have the direct incentivization, so you can run all of those micro transactions after the fact to be able to align all the incentives and make sure everybody's rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, I think like ultimately how I think about the future of work is it's like, it's a very, very centralized company to begin with maybe a couple of founders, but like they don't need to ultimately hire like a whole task force of people where they have to work for them full time. I think every person that's not a founder ultimately will probably have like anywhere from 5 to 10 jobs, right? Where they're able to do, data automation one day, they're able to like ship some other code for another company another day, and they're able to do like Q&A or maintenance on one of the other days. So it's just like, there's so many things that you need from running a company. Just like us as investment vehicles, we outsource sort of a lot of our operations staff with legal, with like, fund administration, tax audits. All of these people are not like in-house people that work full time for us, but like these are things that we need to do as a company that eventually will outsource it to these people. But like right now, it's like just being done in a very, very manual way where it's like, I need to have a referral, I have to sign all of these contracts, I have to do all of these payments. I think in the future, it will just be kind of be like Amazon or e-commerce, right? I click a button, this is what I need, this person will get XYZ done. And like the quality control of that will be done in a way where any bucket can be very easily filled, and it could be instant gratification and instant payment to that person. So I think 80% of your back office for almost any company will then be, it's just like what some of the biggest companies do today. It's just like they use a lot of these cheaper labor, or it's not even like just cheaper labor, but just like easier to access labor that like people are able to sort of just automate the process. They know what they're getting, they know how much they need to pay for it. And a lot of this, you don't need to have like top of the top talent. And I think probably like 80-90% of back office for all companies in the future will be done in the form of like DAOs, where like people can just outsource that from anywhere around the world.
What do you think that does positively or negatively, sort of the mission drivenness or lack of mission drivenness, right? A lot of people associate sort of their life, their identity with the company they work for. And if we turn into kind of mercenaries or task rabbits for a whole bunch of companies, is that good or bad kind of for like the human value?
I think it's like an automated form of slavery, right? When the company just like employs you for like 30 years and like your only identity is with that company. I think in the future, 10 years and beyond, right? You are yourself. Every person is unique in their own right. Like you should be proud of who you are, right? And you could be working for multiple companies, right? Now people are much more proud of the fact they're like making bigger impact for multiple different enterprises, or even making impact for themselves, but they're impacting many, many other people, rather than, hey, I work for Google, which is not even,
Question?
Yeah, I've got a question. So I'm hearing a lot of, the sort of piece worker, maybe working for a lot of different DAOs to make a bunch of different tokens that go up and down in value. I'm curious about that compared to, how to tap the value of the community. So when you say like you have allegiance to a company, it may have been blind in the past, and maybe you're getting your pension fund is getting rated because there's a lot of folks with a profit motive. Obviously, with investment and a lot of investors on the panel, you're looking to return, for return to the fund. But what do you see as the potential for building a really strong community that people have allegiance to that, and then raising entire tide? Like, if you think of each organization is its own bay and its own tide, and then creating a dam. Anyway, I don't want to go too far. I want to explore like the potential for the DAO itself to achieve multiple goals.
Yeah, I think that's even getting back to kind of what Gennaro was saying. It's like there has to be that incentive, that motivation for the individual to participate in the system where they are now task switching all the time, right? There's a huge cost to that. And there has to be a return on that investment to the participant. right? And doing things like we're looking at problems like does crowdsourcing this actually create more value for the participants as well as the organization to create that positive sum outcome?
Yeah. There are some people out there who think everything should be a DAO. I am not one of those people. I think it's very case specific. This concept of community gets thrown around a lot. Often it's just members, with similar financial incentives. I think the two areas that we think it makes sense, one are when you have a true value-oriented common goal, whether it's to buy the Constitution or it's, fans of a professional sports team who are really passionate about it. That's a lot harder to figure out on the business sense, right? That's why the obvious example is financial driven, when you have a bunch of investors who come together who all want to make money together. For me, and I think this is where we're going to go, is a lot of marketplace business models. If you think about companies like Airbnb, where you have a two-sided marketplace, often of buyers and sellers, maybe a social media network like Facebook or whatever the kids are doing these days, where there is value to each individual user as the platform itself gets bigger, right? The network effects. To me, that seems like the first true replacement for the typical corporation or LLC that parts of it should maybe be turned into a DAO.
I mean, it kind of sounds like allegiance to a DAO per se for a particular task. Sounds like almost like allegiance to a labor union in the modern sense. Work for a different shipping company, let's say, but you're all members of this longshoremen's union, local 5631, whatever, right? But the work environment that has been described here, at least to me, I'm not sure how it differs from the current world. So where, like you said earlier, 70 to 80% of the work is still professionalized, and then there's kind of these TaskRabbiters or some kind of freelancers, I suppose, who do the back office. Perhaps it could be accomplished in the Web 2 world on Upwork. And then furthermore, you have that 20-minute scientist. I mean, there's kind of a network, let's say, of experts, freelancers that you can reach out to in the current world. So how do you guys see, in practice, the future of work being different because of a DAO?
Well, I think a lot of this, it can't be automated as quickly as, eventually, if all of this is built on a smart contract and you're able to really just make a marketplace a standard for people's work, right? Right now, it's just you have to have an intro call with someone to understand what they're doing. You have to then sign a contract. Then you have to do payment. It's just very slow, right? In terms of there are better reputable companies that you're able to reach, but I think a lot of that there's a lot of built-in costs to that. Where it's you as a freelancer, you're not getting 100% of what your work merits. Versus if there's one marketplace that everyone can search for each other, then it's a very much automated way to get things done. But also I think one thing that works better in a DAO format is the referral program, right? For example, you refer someone to Uber, they give you a $15 credit, right? A lot of these referral programs should be done in a more DAO-like format, right? Where it's it's very fluid, right? And there's very clear incentivization structures to get people involved in XYZ. And I think that instead of each company designing their own referral program, that could be done in a very sort of DAO-like format.
So for me, the main difference is in the currency or the token, right? Which to me aligns all incentives, right? Any company, DAO, corporation, whatever, can go to Fiverr or Upwork and hire a freelancer and pay him or her $100, $1,000, whatever it may be. That person has no, outside of the quality of their work that they believe in, they have no aligned incentive with the company, no belief in long-term growth, and so you have not gained an advocate. But when your workers are your advocate, we've seen this with startup equity or corporate equity in shares. Now, there's so many issues in distributing that and tracking that and the illiquidity of it. If you can turn that process on its head but unlock the value proposition of it, to me that's very, very powerful. Now, I don't think we're there yet for a whole bunch of different reasons, but I think that's the end vision.
And we're going to have to start to wrap it up here, so maybe just a quick soundbite from the panel and anybody that wants to chime in. But then we're going to take this into a conversation about healthy DAO teams. So get more into like, what is it like to manage a team of people in a DAO?
Yeah, and to follow up what you said, I think it's kind of that arbitraging your time. You're placing your time where you find value in this token, and we can have as much decentralization as automation allows. That's what really enables it to get the value from switching all these time tasks is having that automation, getting that value back in your life of the freedom and the choice, and hopefully maybe some financial ROI.
I think on my end, I kind of want to be wary of, I think, more decentralization leading to more centralization in a way through the DAO.
I mean, I think we should just probably head on to the next question.
Yeah. Any questions from the audience while we're here? I know we're wrapping up. Here's one, front row.
It seems like y'all have talked a decent amount about how DAOs operating as funds should operate. And I was curious, in terms of looking at a DAO as something that should be invested in, what are the factors that you look at?
I didn't understand the question.
What are the factors that you look at in investing in a DAO as an investment? And let's just maybe keep it to bullet points, like stack rank what you look for.
I mean, I think investing in a DAO is the same as investing in any company, right? Like, does it make sense to be a DAO, right? Like, what sort of economic incentives in investing in this DAO do you get beyond just investing in a company, right?
Yeah, I'd say the number one factor in any investment almost always is the team. So instead of underwriting maybe 3 co-founders, you're really trying to understand the community as a whole, how they operate, and what type of value they can extract. The other layer is we're still in the very early days of understanding DAO structure and legal and compliance, and so there's a lot more time, unfortunately, that needs to go into seeing how things are structured.
Team for sure, but I say if it just sounds interesting, might as well ape in a little bit NFA.
This is not financial advice.
And based on where we left it was team seemed like in Web 2 or Web 3 that seems to be the thing, and the team in a DAO is pretty large. It's not 2 or 3 founders. There might be 2 or 3 core team members that can be replaced by the DAO. But let's bring up Rotorless, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about healthy DAO teams and conflict resolution, because that's something that comes up in the fiat world as well.